Hey guys, welcome back to another tumbler tutorial. Today we're going to be working on this rose gold Milky Way tumbler using this knockoff Stanley tumbler that I found. And we are going to start out by spray painting our base in whatever coordinating glitter colors that you would prefer. I'm using rose gold, gold, and white / opal, but you can choose whatever you want and apply the same technique to your color scheme. So we are going to start out by glittering using the epoxy method. And when you do this, you want to make sure to use the chunkiest glitters first. You're going to go around really light-handed and just kind of lay them down as a roadmap. We don't want full coverage because we don't want to cover the epoxy so much that we're not going to be able to blend the other colors into it when we work with those. So just very light-handed. First one is going to be Rose Gold Opal from Peachy Olive Glitters. The second one is Venetian. These are both really chunky. And then we are going to just kind of fade them around the glitter section, not the glitter section, sorry, the paint sections that we had spray painted. And then this is What in Carnation from Peachy Olive Glitters as well. I'm just going to kind of butt that up and try to blend it into whatever color I see fit. And I will tell you guys that Peachy is out of a lot of these colors. I don't know if restocks are coming or when they're coming, if they are. So I would use what you have on your shelves. Another option is Rae Creations. She has a lot of great colors. I just happen to have a lot of rose gold shades in Peachy, so I used what I had on my shelf. So next we're going to go in, this is a medium chunky, and this is Wanderlust from Peachy as well. I'm going to fade that into the rose gold sections, and then we'll move on to our next colors. Next, I'm going in with my gold. This is Venus from Rae Creations. This is basically a dupe for Athena from Peachy. She's been out of Athena for quite some time. I don't know when the restock for that is coming. So I ended up just buying some Venus and I put it in my bottle that I used for Athena. And I've just been using that as my main gold color. So we're going to fade that into our rose gold sections. And then when I fade it into my white section, I'm going to be really light-handed because that gold will really easily take over the golds or the white section. And then once I've got the gold laid down, I'm going to go in with Darling from Rae Creations. And we're going to cover the chunky white that we put down, and then we're going to blend that into the rose gold and gold. And then once the chunky and medium chunkies are laid down, we're going to go in with our fine glitters and kind of fine tune those blends just to make everything look cohesive. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect by any means because we're going to go over it with micas and some ink. So don't beat yourself up too much if it's not super blended. I definitely wouldn't make it like really blunt, if that makes sense. So some sort of a fade, but it definitely doesn't have to be perfect by any means. Now that all the fine glitters are laid down, you can really see how much it helps blend those colors together. So we're gonna knock off any excess. I just tap the top of the tumbler with some scissors into my trash. It knocks off any excess or fallout you may have. After all the excess is knocked off, I'm going to take a piece of printer paper and pat down the glitters. Because we use chunky glitters on our base, we really want to take precautions. Make sure that all of that chunky glitter is laid down flat on the cup. If it's not, it's going to cause sharp bits in your epoxy, and you're going to have to do extra coats of epoxy. And if you've epoxied a Stanley cup, you already know that they are very heavy just because of the size. So we definitely want to eliminate any excess coats of epoxy if we can do that. So this step is really important in making sure that you don't have a really heavy tumbler on your hands, especially because when you fill it with your liquids, it's incredibly heavy. So we are going to pat that down and then sit that on the drying rack to cure. And after it's cured, I spray sealed it with Krylon Triple Thick Spray. I just did 2 coats because it's going to be kind of a hodgepodge of glitters and micas and inks and all that. So I wasn't really like super worried about it not cross-contaminating, because really it's just a swirl that is already blended together, so not super important. But after the spray sealer was dried, I went and put over a coat of Flynn Sisters fast setting epoxy on there. I didn't measure it just because I epoxied a ton of cups at once. I don't know what the exact milliliters were for these coats, so use your best guess. I would say maybe like probably 30 to 40 milliliters if you're doing thinner coats. But again, that's going to vary depending on your epoxy type, the viscosity of the epoxy. So just use your best judgment. Once that first coat of epoxy is cured, I'm going to go over it with a really thin coat of a second layer of epoxy. I'm not using fast set on this because I want to make sure I have sufficient time to lay down my micas and my glitters and my epoxy dye. So unless you're a professional at this, which if you're watching this tutorial, you're probably not, I would definitely recommend a regular setting epoxy. It's definitely prone to flash curing if you use a fast set, and then you're in big trouble and you've got a mess on your hands. So we're going to use just a really thin coat, taking care to make sure that I've got epoxy around the handle. I really struggle with handles because I tend to miss spots around the corners of the handles where it's attached to the cup. So I usually just stop my turner and just really get down in there and look and make sure I've got all the little crevices filled in. And then we want to make sure we're torching our epoxy before we apply any of our micas, because if you're putting a ton of heat on those micas, it's really going to encourage the mica and the dye to swirl more than we want. And with this one, I don't want it to move a whole lot. So I'm going to go in first with my epoxy dye. This is just Armor Art, and you just need a teeny tiny bit. I'm not over exaggerating. This stuff goes a long way. So you can always easily go in and add more. I just go in very light-handed at first, and then I add it in if necessary. You can just put your popsicle stick back on your cup and add some more and, push it out with your gloved finger. But this ended up being just about the right amount. If you do feel like the white ink is a little bit too concentrated, just wipe off your gloves or get some new gloves, and you can kind of spread it around because you've got all of that epoxy on your tumbler already. It's really easy to just kind of spread it out, and then it doesn't have such a harsh color. Next, we're going to go in with our micas. I will list all of the micas that I'm using here. I believe this is Santa's Beard. And when I lay my micas down, I'm going to go lightest to darkest. I want to make sure when I lay my whites down, my gloves are nice and fresh and clean. I don't want any cross-contamination into my white. I want a pure white kind of mica, clean, crisp look. And if we're going in with the dark first, or if we're not changing our gloves, there's a chance you're going to get that cross-contamination and you're going to get your different colors in the white sections. So I'm going to let this play through. You can just kind of watch what I'm doing. Just going to lay them down as I see fit. And just like before, less is more here. You can always add on. You can take away. It's just a pain to have to remove your epoxy and your micas. So definitely start out less is more. And just put whatever colors you want, and I will see you in the next step. Okay, so now that all of the micas are laid down, I am going to very, very lightly torch this, just because stirring up the epoxy, you are stirring up some micro bubbles. So just gonna be super, super careful with that. You don't want any blending on those micas. And then we also wanna make sure that we're doing that before we're adding the second layer of glitter. If you do it after you've laid your raw glitter down, you're gonna end up scorching your glitter pieces, and take it from me, they shrivel up and they do not look great if you do that. So make sure you're not doing it after you've added this excess glitter. I'm just gonna reuse the chunky glitter colors that I used in the base. So we've got Venetian, What and Carnation, and I don't remember what the third color is. I will list them for you guys below. I use so many glitters in this tumbler. So I'm just gonna really, really carefully pinch that and sprinkle it in. Again, less is more. You can always just add on to it, but really light-handed at first, just to accentuate the colors that we already have, because some of that mica dulled those glitters down. And then we are going to put a final coat of epoxy over top of that. Once it's cured, we're gonna go in with our rhinestone steps. This was a surprise just because tumbler for my best friend, so I added her name over top of it. I made it and it was rose gold, and that's her favorite color. And I was like, you know, Mother's Day is coming up. We can just use it as a just because or a Mother's Day gift. So she got that this weekend and she loved it. So now I can post the tutorial. So we are going to go in with Golden Shadows from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop. This is just a scatter mix. I cut out the vinyl in gold, and then I just used whatever rhinestones fit within the vinyl sections. I'm using Liquid Fusion as my glue base. It's what I've used since I started rhinestoning cups, and I really have not had any fallout with those stones. The one exception is the tumbler that I accidentally chucked across the parking lot getting out of my Jeep, but that doesn't really count. So we are going to just do this after our final coat's applied. You don't want to epoxy over the rhinestones. You can if you want. I definitely would not recommend doing it because they lose all of their luster, their shine. Basically, the facets of the stones end up looking like plastic when they're under epoxy, so I would not recommend it. It should stay as long as you're not being really rough on the stones and you give it time to cure. And so after all of those rhinestones are applied and cured, I'm going to wash the cup. After about 24 to 48 hours, you want to give it time to dry, that glue to dry, and then wash it off because the wax from the pens sometimes transfers onto your stones and it dulls those down. But after that, this tumbler is completely finished. I hope you guys love this tutorial. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments. As usual, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not already. Hit the bell button for notifications on future tutorials, and I will see you guys in the next video.